Hey there, pro traders, and welcome to another Monday market review held on behalf of GoPro Trading Academy by yours truly, Ian Giffen. And first things I must say, first off the bat, is I do apologize for the break we've had in some of our training recently. Here in South Africa, we're battling with intermittent power supply, which also affects our communications grid, especially down here in paradise between the oceans and the mountains, where we rely on a number of microwave towers. So apart from cable theft and all sorts of other wonderful things that we've had to deal with recently, I do apologize for the fact that we haven't been quite as consistent with our training in the recent past as I'd like to be. But that being said, I also would encourage you to remember we've got a big announcement coming out in the next week or so. Please do look out for that. We are going to be holding some very important training on advanced price action using many of the techniques that some of you have seen in our live trading training that we've done on our Discord channel. And of course, if you haven't joined that, please make sure that you do so that you have access to some of that training. And keep an eye on our Facebook page at the Forex Trader, because that's where all of our announcements are going to be made. And if you haven't yet followed our page, please do go to it and like it and follow it, and you'll be sure to receive all of the updates as they come out. All right, so jumping into our market review, starting with the euro, as always, we've got here our weekly chart for the euro USD, where you can see that over the last couple of weeks, we've had a consistently bearish market. And this really is probably the biggest theme, certainly over the last week or two, has been euro weakness, but certainly also coupled with some dollar strength as well. It's very visible here on this time frame. So it's something that I know that a lot of you folks, once we had the breakout below the HTC channel, we're looking to trade, for instance, with the daily impulse. Hasn't given much of a gap to get involved with the daily, but certainly if you were trading H4 impulse, I know that many of you have had trades across the board, in fact, with this euro weakness. So a nice bearish market at the moment. And today, well, after Friday with non-farm payrolls and a bit of a pullback, is showing a continuation of that. So moving on to the cable, similar picture, not quite as strong, obviously. That this is really more US dollar strength than it is GBP weakness, and you can see the difference here between the cable and the euro. And here on the daily time frame, you can see that high being ringed today. So another bearish continuation. And a nice class 1 M pattern as well. Well, it looks like we've got that starting. So for those of you who are pattern traders, you should be jumping all over that already. But looking for a breakout of that, a bearish breakout on that HTC channel. Dollar yen, here you can see a continuation today. This is really the dollar strength again. But it has to be said also, the yen showing weakness, certainly since the assassination of their prime minister. I don't think that's helped particularly, but it has been pretty weak over the last 3 weeks, where you can see we've had last week as well, just an inside bar, and we haven't had an impulse candle for some time. However, this is just Monday, so it's looking promising for this week so far. Not that that necessarily means anything, because we don't know how the week's going to end, but definitely looking like we're getting a bullish breakout here on the daily time frame on dollar yen. So keep an eye out for that. We might get some really good trading activity through the course of the week on that one. Dollar Swiss languishing inside the HTC channel here on the weekly time frame. And although we've got quite a long, consistent bullish move here on daily over the last 2 weeks with multiple impulse candles, we're still inside the HTC channel, and we haven't actually got a valid pattern. So we haven't been trading this on the higher time frames, but as soon as you drop down to the lower time frames, intraday down to 5 minutes, certainly there have been some opportunities there over the last week or so. USD CAD, similarly, you can see how we're testing that resistance level, but also inside the HTC channel on a weekly and on daily as well, with an attempt to break out of the HTC on the bullish side, having failed through the course of last week. So staying away from some of these for obvious reasons. Whereas here on the Aussie, not the greatest necessarily, but the fact of the matter is, despite the fact that we've got some weakness here with that previous pullback that we've discussed before into the HTC channel, the market's still in a bearish trend, albeit a bit of a weak one, and also seeing these bullish candles on the weekly time frame in that bearish wave. So not the strongest, and that's very clear here on the daily time frame, where you can see it's just a general downward move. But again, today it looks like we're seeing a higher ringed and a bearish continuation and a potential breakout if this continues like this today of the HTC channel, which it tried to do through the course of last week, but obviously failed to do. So maybe things are changing and we're starting to get some decent price movement again. Similar picture on the Kiwi, weekly and daily. Excuse me. And again, looking for this bearish breakout today. Right, so moving on to our yen crosses. Here's euro yen. And again, euro weakness showing itself over here, but inside of our HTC channel on weekly, no valid pattern. There's a double top there, but looking for a bearish breakout here as well. Failed to do that, obviously, as you can see, last week, couple of times on Wednesday and Friday. But we did get below that 55 EMA. Let's see if that dynamic resistance level does hold, in which case we should, if this euro weakness continues, we should get a bearish breakout in the next day or so. But we're not predicting. Let's just wait and see if it does actually happen before we look to trade that market. GBP yen, and not much going on here at all on weekly or daily. So staying away from some of these, obviously. Swiss yen, very different picture, but we know that we've been in a strong bullish trend on the weekly time frame for a considerable amount of time, going right back to the beginning of the year or earlier in the year. And well, at the moment, as you can see, we are in a retracement of this bullish trend. We did see that potentially coming with the prior week's high test or inverted hammer. So no big surprise there with last week's bearish candle. But certainly this is where we're looking for the end of that retracement wave and potentially getting that today. So if this bearish cyclicity breaks down with a bullish impulse candle over here, then that would still be a class 3 W pattern. You might be looking for something stronger than that with your rule set, but it does mean that that bearish cyclicity is over, giving us a strong indication that bullish cyclicity and therefore that bullish wave in the weekly trend will be starting. So let's keep a close eye on Swiss yen. CAD yen, not so much. Likewise, just floating horizontally around that resistance level, or just below it, I should say. And you can see here on the daily time frame as well that really nothing worth looking at. You can see I haven't really updated that either. Similarly on Aussie yen, nothing worth looking at. And Kiwi yen, well, that's daily and weekly, all a similar picture. These are not really tradable markets for our core strategies. Right, Euro GBP. Here you can see that Euro weakness again through the course of last week, and this is against the pound. So a very clear bearish impulse candle, but inside of that channel on weekly, but we do have a bearish breakout, obviously on Thursday, on the daily time frame, looking at our HTC channel. So if you're trading Euro GBP, you are obviously looking for a bit of a pullback, which we might be getting now, and then look to see if we get a continuation on that. So certainly bearish at the moment. And the same goes for Euro Swiss. So a consistent picture here of Euro weakness across the board. And last week, of course, this giving us a bearish breakout for anyone who does look to trade this instrument. So let's wait and see. You may well be getting a nice little setup here to short this market, but we do need to still have a bearish impulse candle for the daily impulse. Same here on Euro CAD, and here you can see how across all of these Euro crosses, we're seeing these bearish moves. Last week, getting a strong bearish impulse candle outside of HTC. And here on daily, it's really just going one way. So that coupled a bit with some Canadian dollar strength means that you've been looking to trade this on H4 impulse. I know that many of you jumped all over that last week and have done quite well out of that. Euro Aussie, not so much, even though we could see the Euro weakness in last week's bearish impulse candle, still inside the HTC, no valid patterns. Excuse me, and the same thing for the Euro NZD. So not really interested in those ones. But we've had plenty to play with on the others. Right, looking at our GBP crosses here, you can see that last week was a retracement inside bar. So it kind of brought to an end the activity the bearish activity that we were looking at for our lower time frames. Certainly something like the H4 impulse, because we don't really go lower than that on these other pairs. But you can see the bearish cyclicity having broken down here quite solidly. So that's the end of that for now. Let's wait and see. Not really interested in anything there. GBP CADs, that's just daily, but it really shows the same kind of picture that we're seeing a bit of a breakdown, finding support at this level at the bottom of that previous bearish wave in the weekly trend. GBP Aussie has weekly just still sideways and has been since, well, what's that, beginning of April. I'm not interested in this at all, despite the fact that we're seeing some bigger movements on the candles themselves. There's no consistency of movement at all across these, as you can see here on GBP NZD as well. So as I always say, folks, you know, trading success from a technical perspective is just as much as knowing what to leave alone as it is what to choose. Right, CAD Swiss, likewise, not really interested in that despite last week's bullish impulse candle. There's just nothing for us to do here at the moment. There's no valid patterns either, even for our pattern traders. Certainly not at the moment. Aussie Swiss, we might be getting a valid class 1M pattern stacking up, but we'd have to wait and see even towards the end of this week before we can even look at that, maybe even another week after that. So nothing for us there. On daily, you could argue that we might well be that this is a setup to short this market for a daily impulse, but again, you know, that would you'd be pretty aggressive to do that. Nothing wrong with that if that's part of your rule set, assuming that that is the start of the next bearish wave. It's more of a hybrid as a result of that, because we are technically still in a phase 2 retracement here on the weekly time frame, and of course inside the channel as well. So you'd have to be a pure pattern trader for that. But if you are, then certainly that if this closes as a bearish impulse candle, then that's a setup for you. Aussie CAD, also last week you could see that retracement candle on the weekly time frame, but we are outside of the HTC. So for channel traders, certainly this could well be a setup, as long as you don't mind the inside C close, obviously, but today giving us the potential for a nice bearish impulse candle. Aussie Kiwi, not so much. Obviously on this one, you can see we've been going sideways for, well, a couple of months now. And daily time frame, obviously, despite anything else, is just chopping sideways. So of no interest to us at all. Kiwi Swiss, certainly a bit better. We've seen that Swiss franc strength as well historically. We are outside of our HTC channel, despite last week's retracement candle. It's still an inside bar. And looking at this time frame for a breakdown and that bullish cyclicity, if we get that, then that again is a potential for a bearish resumption of that weekly trend and the start of the next bearish wave in that trend. Right, Kiwi CAD, also again that Canadian dollar strength showing itself here outside of the channel. We knew that a week ago. Nothing really happened last week with that inside bar, or that spinning top, I should say. But for those of you who are daily impulse traders, then you may well have jumped into a trade already late last week. I wouldn't have done that, obviously, because we don't like to enter the day before or the morning of non-farm, which is what that would have required. But you may well be getting yourself a nice entry today. So that's it for the currency page. Let's have a quick look at what's happening across the others. As I'm sure many of you know, gold has given us a breakout here on the weekly time frame on that HTC at long last. So it's also was a valid impact. I know some of you have picked that up about a month ago already, and have been trading this bearish move already for several weeks. But last week gave us that the breakout of the HTC channel, very visible here on the daily time frame. Obviously, that being, what is it, Monday or Tuesday last week, beg your pardon, where we got that nice bearish move, broke outside of the preceding HTC channel, and I know that some of you caught a bit of that as well. So keep an eye on it. We do have an inside bar and an engulfing bar for last week. That is 2 points. So if you get a bearish setup here, then I reckon that you should be going for a continuation on that. Right, looking at our indices, still pretty much sideways, surprisingly. Overall, still definitely a bearish outlook, but we do know that we've had something of recovery over the last while, and last week's bullish candle over there certainly reflecting that. Bit more visible here on the daily time frame, really just chopping sideways on the Dow. Similar picture on S&P. That's the daily, obviously, and weekly. So nothing to write home about. Still overall a bearish picture, but showing some bearish weaknesses, you know, with the close back inside of our HTC channels. The Nasdaq, always a bit of a bellwether for me. You can see that that's showing even more weakness on the weekly time frame, and likewise on the daily. So nothing really of interest for us there at the moment. After that, well, we had some nice bearish action on that up until, well, what was that? The early part of May. That's a while ago already. Right, oil obviously being a bit of a story. Last week was a serious roller coaster ride for the oil buffs. It doesn't look like much on weekly with that bullish hammer, or you could call it bearish with a bearish close. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really tell the story, but the daily does. So very choppy, but overall definitely bearish still as well. So looking for a bit of a drop in the price of oil over there. For those folks who are suffering with fuel prices at the moment, might give you a bit of relief. And finally, of course, we've got Bitcoin. So that's the daily or weekly, certainly not worth looking at, except to say overall still bearish despite last week's bullish impulse candle. And in fact, over the weekend, we had a bearish gap. So a bit of relief for those folks who are looking to maintain some value on their Bitcoin. Look, long term, we still are very bullish overall on cryptocurrencies, but this is we're still looking for a technical buying point on this, and at the moment, the market just hasn't given us one. So, biding our time for it. All right, folks. So, as I say, if you're enjoying these, please make sure that you follow our page, and if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, hit that notifications bell. We are going to be bringing out some advanced price action training for you guys in the very near future, and making some announcements around that. So please be sure to make sure that you do get notified of that by following the page and making sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. And as always, if you've got any questions for me, just pop them into the comments below. I'll be sure to answer all of them. All right, folks, have a superb week's training further and trading. If we don't have too many problems with our power supply of the week, I will try to jump into the Discord channel again. It's been really difficult, real challenge recently. So again, I apologize for that. But if I can do something about it, then I will. So hope to see you then. Bye for now.